5:30 a.m., Guilford County, North Carolina. 14 federal vehicles moved in a coordinated perimeter around a carnival lot on Highway 21 North, 3 miles outside Greensboro. No lights, no sirens. The Ferris wheels stood dark against the May pre-dawn sky. The generator trailers sat in their overnight positions. Engine hum steady. A carnival at rest looks like any other industrial lot. Cables, machinery, gravel, exhaust. Nothing unusual to anyone passing on the highway. Then the K9 units hit the second trailer from the south fence line. They didn't stop barking. Inside a false bottom compartment built into the diesel tank housing of a modified 47-foot equipment trailer, agents from Homeland Security Investigations and the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation found the first tracks and 40 years of trust built by a third-generation carnival showman with 11 straight years of clean safety inspections. This is the story of how a hydraulic mechanic, hired for a single 4-day job on a zipper arm, noticed a pneumatic compressor that shouldn't have been running, and what that one observation set in motion. The mechanic's name was Carlos Mendez. He had no federal training, no law enforcement background. He had 19 years of industrial hydraulics work, grain elevators, bridge lifts, oil field equipment. He knew how machinery sounded when it was doing its job, and he knew when it wasn't. February 7th, 2026, Burlington, North Carolina, a maintenance yard on Alamance Industrial Drive. Carolina Skyway Amusements was in its winter layover, staging equipment before the spring circuit began. Mendez arrived on a Monday with 2 assistants and a parts invoice to rebuild the hydraulic drive arm on a zipper unit that had sheared a primary cylinder during the previous season's final date in Wilmington. The lot manager, a man named Ackerman, walked him through the yard on arrival, showed him the zipper, pointed out the cable runs, gestured toward the south fence line and said, "Those are maintenance trailers, private, no need to go near them." Mendez had heard that kind of instruction before. Carnival operators were territorial about their equipment. He had his work. He stayed on his work. Day 2, mid-afternoon, he was up on the zipper platform checking the rebuilt cylinder alignment when he heard the noise. A pneumatic compressor, mid-range unit, probably 40 to 60 psi output, running continuously from the south fence line. Not attached to any right assembly, not connected to any visible equipment in that area. Just running. He mentioned it to one of his assistants. "Refrigeration, probably," the man said. "Keeping something cold." Mendez let it go. He had a job to finish. But at 7 p.m., when the crew packed up for the night, the compressor was still running. At 6 a.m. the following morning when they returned, it was still running. Same load, same steady rhythm, no cycling, the way a refrigeration unit would. Day 4. He finished the hydraulic arm by early afternoon and walked the yard perimeter to collect his equipment before loading out. That walk took him past the south fence line, close enough to see details he hadn't seen from the zipper platform. 2 of the 6 trailers parked in that area had been modified. The running board sat 2 to 3 inches higher than factory standard. The diesel tank housings had additional welded panels along the rear face. Clean work, professional, but not original manufacture. Ventilation slots had been added, and the padlocks on the exterior access panels were not the standard combination locks that Carnival operators used everywhere else on the lot. They were high-security keyed units, the kind used on gun safes and evidence lockers. Mendez loaded his truck. He drove home. He sat at his kitchen table for 40 minutes. Then he called the tip line he had seen posted at the Alamance County Way Station. To understand what investigators inherited from that call, you need to understand what Carolina Skyway Amusements actually was. Not what it claimed to be, what it was. Glen Boomer Holcomb was 63 years old. His grandfather had started the business in the 1950s with a single Ferris wheel and a tilt-a-whirl, working county fairs from the Virginia line to the Georgia coast. His father expanded the operation through the 60s and 70s. Boomer inherited the whole apparatus in 2003 and spent the next 2 decades building it into one of the most reliable carnival circuits in the Carolinas. 23 permitted stops annually, 6 Ferris wheels, a giant zipper, 14 kiddie rides, and a fleet of 47 trailers that moved the entire operation between fairgrounds on a 9 to 14-day rotation. The North Carolina Department of Labor had reviewed Carolina Skyway's ride safety documentation every year for 11 consecutive years without a single citation. The municipalities that contracted the operation: Wilmington for the Beach Festival, Asheville for the Mountain Fair, Concord, Hickory, Fayetteville, Lumberton, knew Carolina Skyway as a dependable presence. Holcomb showed up when he said he would, ran a clean midway, and left no problems when the permit expired. That credibility was everything. A traveling carnival occupies an unusual legal position in American commerce. It moves between jurisdictions on municipal permits. It crosses state lines without cargo inspection. Trailers are classified as equipment, not freight shipments. It parks on fairgrounds, county property, and private land with explicit municipal blessing. The logbooks it files are ride maintenance records, not transport manifests. When a maintenance trailer parks 200 yards from the midway, nobody asks questions. That's normal. Carnival lots are sprawling, temporary, and institutional in their informality. Someone had understood that legal position very clearly when they designed the network operating inside Carolina Skyway. 6 of the 47 trailers had been modified, not converted, modified carefully, incrementally, in a way that left the trailers functional as equipment haulers while concealing secondary compartments built into the diesel tank housings and forward chassis panels. The compartments were ventilated, temperature regulated, supplied with basic provisions through the access panels. The pneumatic compressor Mendez heard was a pressure-regulating unit connected to the ventilation system, keeping air moving continuously while the trailers were stationary. The trailers were never the same 6 from stop to stop on paper. Holcomb had a rotating configuration system. The modified units cycled through the fleet paperwork as maintenance rigs. Maintenance rigs became general haulers. General haulers received new inventory tags. On paper, the Carolina Skyway fleet looked like a normal rotation of aging commercial equipment. In practice, the 6 modified trailers were always present on the lot, identified by coded position tags that only lot management understood. The buyers received arrival windows keyed to the Carnival's permitted schedule. The trailers would be positioned in the pre-designated area. The windows were always overnight, after the midway closed, before the day crew arrived. The Carnival's legitimate permit schedule provided the framework. Holcomb knew which stops had the right geography. Lots with secondary road access, sufficient buffer from residential areas, ambient industrial noise levels that absorbed unusual activity. The network had been running since October 2025. In the 7 months before the raid, it had completed 38 documented deliveries. The tip came into the HSI field office in Charlotte on February 9th. The duty analyst flagged it under standard trafficking protocol. Anonymous tip, commercial vehicle, modified trailer compartments, unusual access hardware. Requesting follow-up. That follow-up would normally take weeks. A single anonymous tip about compressed air running in a Carnival trailer doesn't automatically trigger federal tactical action. The volume of tips moving through federal trafficking lines is enormous. Most resolve to nothing. What moved this one up the priority queue had nothing to do with the tip itself. HSI Charlotte was already running a separate investigation, a buyer network case involving the movement of juveniles across the North Carolina-South Carolina state line. The case had stalled. They had transactional data pointing to an active network, but couldn't identify the delivery mechanism. The money was moving. The buyers were identified. The pipeline that supplied them was invisible. One of the analysts on that case, a woman named Whitfield, had been running cross-references on commercial vehicle permits in the relevant counties for the previous 6 months. Carolina Skyway appeared 12 times in the results. Carnival permits. Expected. Nothing unusual. Then she ran the Mendez tip the same week. The coincidence. A Carnival fleet, modified trailers, unusual access control, sitting in the exact geographic footprint where her buyer network data was concentrated. Moved the file from standard queue to joint review within 48 hours. Whitfield was on the phone with the North Carolina SBI's human trafficking unit by the end of the week. Trafficking interdiction cases in the Carolinas in a decade. The first phase of the investigation was physical surveillance. An HSI team embedded in the area around Carolina Skyway's spring startup, following the operation from its Burlington winter yard to its first permitted stop of the 2026 season, a county fairgrounds outside Concord in late February. Agents working in plain clothes observed the setup over 3 days, photographing trailer positions, logging which specific units were placed at the south perimeter, documenting exterior access panel configurations. The modified trailers were there, 6 of them, positioned exactly as Mendez had described. The second phase required warrants. With probable cause established through physical observation, HSI obtained court orders authorizing GPS placement on the 6 modified trailers and covert access to a section of the Carnival's generator power grid, sufficient to document electrical draw at the south perimeter positions. The electrical data was the pivot point. The compressor units running inside the modified trailers drew power continuously. Not intermittently, the way a refrigeration unit cycles. Continuously at a load consistent with active pressure regulation, consistent with a ventilation system supplying occupants who require fresh air on a sustained basis. The compressors ran for 3 days at a time, then went silent for 4 to 6 days, then ran again. The pattern aligned precisely with the Carnival's permitted schedule. 3 days stationary at a stop, then travel, then set up at the next site. The compressors activated when the Carnival was parked. They stopped when the convoy was moving. Something was in those trailers during every stationary period. Analyst Whitfield ran the activation timestamps against the full permit history going back to October 2025. The window the buyer network case had flagged. 16 stops, 16 activation windows, consistent across the entire operating season. The compressors started running within 4 hours of each lot's setup, she noted in a subsequent case summary filed with the court. They stopped within 2 hours of each teardown. The timing was too precise to be coincidental. The system was being actively managed. The third phase was the hardest. They needed to connect the trailers to actual exchanges, to document that the compartments were being used for human trafficking, not some other form of concealed storage. For that, they needed surveillance of an actual handoff. The surveillance team ran 3 separate attempts to position covert cameras covering the south perimeter area at 2 consecutive Carnival stops. All 3 failed. The lots were configured differently enough from their aerial survey maps that the camera angles either had obstructed sight lines from perimeter structures or were positioned too exposed to discovery by the overnight security rotation that Holcomb ran on his crew. 3 weeks, no direct observational evidence of an exchange. SBI's trafficking unit was pushing for search warrant execution. They had enough. Physical modification, electrical data, GPS tracking. Why wait for an exchange? HSI's position was more conservative. A search warrant authorizes entry. If the compartments are empty when agents arrive, if the network has a warning system, a schedule that doesn't match the surveillance windows, a lookout who trips a signal, you walk away with modified trailers and no victims, no buyers, no upstream network. Everyone disappears within hours. They needed more. The break came not from physical surveillance, but from the financial investigation running in parallel. One of the less discussed aspects of trafficking cases is how often the financial record is cleaner than the operational one. Criminal networks that move people are careful about physical evidence. They are often less careful about money. In March 2026, a forensic accountant embedded with the HSI Charlotte case team ran a review of Carolina Skyway's business banking going back 3 years. The business maintained accounts at 3 regional institutions. On the surface, the financials were consistent with a mid-sized Carnival operation, irregular cash deposits matching fair date cycles, equipment maintenance expenses, payroll for a crew of 23. One line item didn't fit. Over the course of 2025, Carolina Skyway had received 8 wire transfers from 3 separate LLCs registered in Delaware, Georgia, and Tennessee. Total value, $412,000. The stated purpose on transferred documentation, venue services, and logistical consulting. A Carnival operation doesn't do logistical consulting. $412,000 in consulting fees, on top of normal operating revenue, represented a margin that made no operational sense for an organization of Carolina Skyway's size. The forensic accountant flagged it. Standard shell company review followed. All 3 LLCs had been incorporated within 8 months of the first wire transfer. All 3 used the same registered agent. All 3 listed the same suite address at a mail forwarding service in Wilmington, Delaware. She spent an afternoon working through the Delaware incorporation records and the registered agent's client list. Nothing obvious surfaced immediately. Then she cross-referenced the 3 LLC beneficial owners against the SBI's existing buyer network database from the parallel investigation. One name appeared in both datasets. A Raleigh real estate developer who appeared in the SBI data as a suspected buyer also appeared in Delaware LLC filings as the beneficial owner of one of the 3 shell companies. They had a buyer. They had a financial link. They had a thread connecting the payment infrastructure to the delivery mechanism. Within 48 hours, that connection changed the entire framing of the investigation. This wasn't a Carnival operator who had been recruited, pressured, or deceived into participation. This was an integrated operation, financial infrastructure, established buyer relationships, payment architecture designed to survive routine financial auditing, the consulting fee structure, the multi-state LLC registration, the deliberate obscuring of beneficial ownership. Boomer Holcomb had not been an unwilling participant in someone else's operation. He was a founding architect of this one. I spent time working through the case file documentation and the post-arrest materials, and one detail kept nagging at me. The consulting fee structure is not something you build after you've already started an operation like this. You build it in advance. The LLCs were registered months before the first October 2025 ledger entry. The payment architecture was in place before the first modified trailer was positioned at a fair. What does that mean practically? It means someone, Holcomb, or someone working with him, made a deliberate forward-looking business decision, chose the vehicle, chose the route, chose the payment methodology, time of the raid. The ledger entries describe a total of between 62 and 71 individuals moved through the network across the 7-month period. The range reflects uncertainty in the numerical notations in some entries. The raid on May 19th recovered 17. The other 40-plus were already gone. The second buyer identification came in April from a deeper review of communications records obtained under a separate warrant. A contractor in Spartanburg, South Carolina, whose phone and financial activity had appeared in the SBI's interstate data, was now linked through 3 separate contact chains to Holcomb's shell company network. A third identification followed within days, a former municipal employee in Richmond, Virginia. By mid-April, HSI and SBI had 9 confirmed buyers identified by name across 4 states: North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and Tennessee. All 9 would be targeted simultaneously with the Carnival raid on the execution date. The plan was set. The only remaining question was when. 11 days before the planned operation, a complication emerged. The SBI surveillance team monitoring Holcomb's Greensboro setup observed an unfamiliar vehicle, a commercial van with out-of-state plates, making what appeared to be a slow approach to the south fence line of the lot. The van parked short of the trailer area, idled for 4 minutes, then left without any visible contact. The concern: if a buyer or a network lookout had detected surveillance presence and reported back, Holcomb might strip the modified trailers and scatter before the warrant date. HSI immediately pulled the physical surveillance team back to a greater standoff distance. The lot was monitored only through passive systems, GPS feeds, and electrical grid data for the following 48 hours. The compressors kept running. The modified trailers stayed in position. Nothing changed. The out-of-state van was identified the following day as a commercial laundry service contracted by the Carnival for crew linens. Wrong appearance at the wrong moment. No connection to the network. The May 19th date held. What agents had assembled by that point was the following: GPS tracking on 6 modified trailers across 10 Carnival stops. Electrical data confirming active compartment use during every stationary period across 16 sites. Financial evidence linking 3 shell company payment structures to a confirmed buyer. 2 additional buyer identifications from communications records. A handwritten ledger, its existence confirmed by a warrant-authorized review of Holcomb's financial records that reference payments to accounting, believed to contain the operational record of all 38 transactions. No direct observational evidence of an exchange, but enough. The search warrant was filed under seal on May 5th. Execution date, May 19th. The logistics of a simultaneous multi-jurisdictional operation of this kind are worth describing in detail because they rarely get covered in news accounts that focus on the outcome. 16 separate warrant executions. 1 primary target, the Greensboro Carnival lot. 15 secondary targets across North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and Tennessee, all 9 buyer residences and 6 associated addresses. All 16 executions had to occur within the same 30-minute window, beginning at 5:28 a.m., to prevent cross-network communication between arrested parties. The 16 teams were briefed separately. None of the 15 secondary teams had access to the full scope of the operation. They knew their specific target and the simultaneous execution requirement, but not the complete buyer network map. This was a deliberate security protocol to reduce information leakage risk in the weeks before execution. HSI and SBI ran joint rehearsal planning for the primary Carnival target. The lot layout had been mapped from aerial observation, ground surveillance photos, and permit application documents obtained from the Greensboro Municipal office. The modified trailers' positions were known from GPS. The access panel configurations were known from the Concord surveillance photos. What wasn't certain was whether Holcomb had any kind of warning system, physical sensors, a crew member with instructions to alert on unusual perimeter activity, a dead man's switch of some kind tied to his personal communication device. The planning accounted for rapid perimeter coverage and simultaneous multi-point entry, specifically to minimize the window in which any warning system could activate. 2 K9 units from SBI, both trained on human scent detection protocols rather than drug or explosives detection, would lead the approach to the south perimeter. 4 HSI tactical agents per confirmed trailer, 2 SBI investigators for Holcomb's personal vehicle, 1 agent each for the lot manager's unit, the main office trailer, and the bunk units at the north end of the lot. Medical support staged separately, FBI Victim Services unit personnel, and emergency medical technicians at a secondary location half a mile from the entry point. Ready to move immediately on the plan was sound. The execution was tighter. 4:45 a.m., a commercial parking lot on Highway 21 North. 14 vehicles staged. No external communication. The teams had been in position since 4 a.m., running radio silent in vehicles with no identifying markings. At 4:50 a.m., the pre-raid brief. Final confirmation of warrant authorization through secure channel. Final confirmation that all 16 secondary teams were staged and ready. At 5:05 a.m., authorization confirmed. All teams held for the 528 signal. At 5:28 a.m., the perimeter moved. The 3 access points, main gate off the highway, service road along the east fence, agricultural access road behind the property, reached their positions simultaneously. No sirens, no overhead lighting. The Carnival lot was illuminated only by its own perimeter security lights, which Holcomb's crew had left running overnight. The K9 units and their handlers moved to the south fence line in the first 30 seconds of entry. The first dog hit trailer 2 at 5:30 a.m., barking continuous. The handler called it immediately. The second dog confirmed on trailer 4, 11 seconds later. Down the line, trailer 6. Then trailer 1 from the main fence. 4 confirmations in under 3 minutes. Both dogs continued. Trailer 3 negative. Trailer 5 negative. 4 out of 6 trailers confirmed active. The access panel on trailer 2 was the first target. The high security padlock on the exterior access door resisted standard field tools. The hardened shackle on the keyed unit was rated for bolt cutter resistance up to a specific jaw size, and the standard field cutters in the kit were below the threshold. An HSI agent with a hydraulic cutter tool cleared it in 40 seconds. The delay was minor. It felt long. The compartment inside was a modified diesel tank housing, roughly 4 feet high by 6 feet wide by 9 feet deep. Internal lighting from a battery unit on the wall. Basic padding along the floor surface. A water container attached to children. 17 total, ages 8 through 14. The 2 trailers that the dogs had not confirmed, trailers 3 and 5, were empty. Their compartments were present, same construction and ventilation hardware, but unoccupied. Positions in rotation that happened to be empty on this specific date. Meanwhile, the main lot operation continued without interruption. Holcomb's fifth-wheel coach was breached at 5:32 a.m. He was in bed, taken into custody without resistance, dressed, and placed in a federal vehicle. He said nothing. Ackerman was found in his trailer, detained. The overnight security crew, 2 men at the fence line, detained at point of contact. 4 additional crew members sleeping in bunk units at the north end of the lot were detained in the same sweep. 6 arrests at the scene. The lot fully secured by 5:50 a.m., 22 minutes from first approach to full secure. Simultaneously across 4 states, the 16 secondary teams executed. The 9 buyer warrants went in within 30 minutes of the Carnival perimeter breach. All 9 served before news of the raid could circulate through any communication channel. 7 resulted in immediate arrests. 2 produced detentions pending arraignment after individuals were located at secondary addresses rather than their primary residences. 16 teams, 4 states, 30-minute window, 16 for 16. At 5:47 a.m., an HSI evidence team found the ledger. It was in Holcomb's fifth-wheel coach, inside a locked gun safe recessed behind built-in cabinetry. The combination was a standard digital keypad, his birth year and month, a combination sourced from financial records obtained during the pre-warrant investigation. The ledger was a spiral-bound notebook, handwritten, 43 pages. First entry, October 9th, 2025. Last entry, May 17th, 2026. 2 days before the raid. 38 entries total. Each included a coded lot designation matching the Carnival's permit schedule, a date range, a numerical notation for individuals moved, and a letter number code matching buyer network identifiers from SBI's existing database. Some entries included dollar amounts. The forensic accountant who had flagged the shell company transfers reviewed the ledger in the weeks following the raid. The cash values documented across entries, not accounting for entries without monetary notation, totaled over $2.3 million for the 7-month operating period. That figure represents only what was written down. The actual financial footprint of the network is believed to be substantially higher. Here's what this case tells us about how institutional trust functions as a criminal tool. And it's worth saying clearly. The 11-year inspection record, the county permit history, the relationships with municipal recreation departments across 2 states. Every clean inspection report brought credibility. Every successful fair was a deposit of trust that the network then spent from the other side. The municipalities that contracted Carolina Skyway weren't negligent. The inspectors who signed the ride safety records weren't corrupt. They were operating in good faith within a system that was never designed to check this. Ride safety inspection covers mechanical operation of rides. It does not include interior access to non-ride trailers. Municipal permit applications require proof of insurance and inspection compliance. They do not require fleet interior audits. The network operated in the gap between what institutions check and what they assume, and it used that gap for 7 months across 16 cities in 4 states. From the outside, it looked complete. It wasn't. In the 2 weeks following the May 19th raid, HSI's financial team worked backward through the ledger's buyer codes against a broader data set of communications records obtained from the 9 buyer warrants. 9 buyers arrested, 12 distinct buyer codes in the ledger. 3 codes appeared in 7 ledger entries that didn't match any of the 9 arrested individuals. 3 unidentified buyers, 7 transactions between them. They hadn't been identified before the raid because their entries used a variant code format, a subset that the pre-raid analysis had not fully resolved. Not an error in the investigation. The format variation was subtle enough that it read as a notation difference rather than a distinct buyer category. As of this report, those 3 warrants are outstanding. The individuals have not been publicly identified. HSI has confirmed that at least one of the 3 is believed to have relocated outside North Carolina following early news coverage of the raid. Separately, the 38 ledger entries describe between 62 and 71 individuals moved through the network across the 7-month period. The range reflects ambiguity in some numerical notations. Investigators have located and identified 29 of those individuals. The remaining 33 to 42 have not been confirmed. Some may have been transported out of state and are outside the current investigative geography. Some may be in circumstances that make identification difficult. Some may not be alive. Here's the part most won't say out loud. Holcomb's sentencing, when it comes, will almost certainly focus on the documented 7-month operating period. October 2025 through May 2026, the 38 entries in the ledger. That's what can be proven. But the 11 years before that matter, every clean inspection record was a tool. Every good faith municipal relationship was a resource deliberately cultivated and then exploited. The credibility Holcomb built over a decade wasn't separate from the crime. It was part of it. A legal system works with what can be charged and proven. We understand the constraint, but the gap between what's provable and what actually happened is part of this story, and the communities in those 16 cities deserve to know it. What do you think? Should a defendant's deliberate construction of institutional trust, built over years and then used as criminal cover, be factored separately in sentencing? Drop your answer. Prosecutors in the Middle District of North Carolina are probably weighing the same question right now. Put yourself in Whitfield's position at the moment she cross-referenced the Carnival permits with her buyer network data. Two separate investigations, one overlapping geographic footprint, a connection that could be coincidence or could be the break she had been looking for months. She ran the comparison on a Tuesday afternoon. She had no particular reason to expect it to hit. Sometimes the thing that breaks a case is just someone doing the next step because it was the next step. The charges filed as of late May 2026. Operation of a continuing criminal enterprise. He faces a potential sentence that carries mandatory minimums under federal trafficking statutes that range from 15 years upward, depending on the ages of the victims and the scope established in trial. Lot manager Ackerman, same tier of charges as Holcomb, based on evidence of his active role in positioning the modified trailers, managing overnight lot access, and communicating with buyers. 4 crew members arrested at the scene, charged individually based on specific evidence of participation. 2 face charges of conspiracy and harboring. 2 face charges limited to the specific acts documented on the night of their arrest. 9 buyer network arrests, all charged with conspiracy to commit sex trafficking and related offenses. 7 have entered plea discussions with the U.S. Attorney's Office. 2 are contesting charges. 3 outstanding warrants, active, not yet in custody. The financial forfeiture proceeding has been initiated against the Carolina Skyway fleet and Holcomb's personal property. The modified trailers are estimated at between $3 and $4 million in total asset value. The 3 Delaware LLCs have been dissolved by court order. Asset freeze orders are in place for accounts connected to the shell company. Reunification with families has been completed for 11 of the 17 as of early June 2026. Reunification proceedings for the remaining 6 are ongoing, complicated in several cases by documentation issues unrelated to the trafficking case itself. The 33 to 42 prior victims, who have not been confirmed, remain an active open investigation. HSI has not publicly stated a target date for resolution. The financial investigation has its own timeline. Separate from the criminal prosecution, the $2.3 million documented in the ledger is a floor. The payment architecture, LLCs, mail forwarding registered agents, wire transfers structured just under reporting thresholds, is consistent with a system designed to process substantially more than what landed in those 3 Delaware entities. Where the rest of the money went is a question the investigation has not publicly answered. And then there's Carlos Mendez. He completed his 4-day job on the zipper hydraulic arm in February and returned to his regular contract work. He was contacted by HSI investigators in early March. He provided a formal statement, was designated as a cooperating witness, and submitted to multiple follow-up interviews through April and May as the investigation developed. Federal law does not provide automatic compensation for human trafficking tips. There are discretionary compensation programs in case. As of this report, the question of Mendez's compensation remains unresolved. What he said in his formal statement about why he made the call has been partially disclosed in court documents. His words, "The locks were wrong. A man hiding equipment uses a combination lock. A man hiding something that can walk away uses a key lock." That observation is not in any federal law enforcement training manual. It is not the product of any anti-trafficking awareness curriculum. It is the product of 19 years of reading how hardware behaves when it is doing its intended job versus when it is doing something it was not originally designed for. One detail that stuck with me when reading through the case materials: the compressor had been running for 3 days before Mendez noticed it. 3 days at the Burlington Winter Yard. Crew members moving around the lot. maintenance personnel checking equipment, Ackerman doing his rounds. No one else flagged it. This isn't a criticism of those people. The compressor noise was ambient, part of the general mechanical background of an operating carnival yard. The trailers were in an area marked off-limits. The carnival environment generates constant mechanical sound. Generators, hydraulics, motors running and cycling. The compressor was invisible because the context made it normal. Mendez heard it because he was listening for something different. He was listening for equipment that wasn't behaving the way its function required. 19 years of industrial hydraulics work trains that kind of attention. The compressor should not have been running continuously at a parked, non-operational trailer in a winter maintenance yard. That was the anomaly. That was the one fact that didn't fit. Is this justice served or too little too late for the victims who weren't in those trailers on May 19th? Comment your honest read. We see every response. Subscribe so you don't miss the follow-up when the first sentencing hearing is scheduled. The financial forfeiture case and the criminal prosecution are on separate timelines. The first sentencing is expected in late 2026, and the asset proceedings will likely extend into 2027. We'll cover both, including whatever resolves on the 3 outstanding buyer warrants. The carnival circuit continues through the Carolinas this summer. Different operators, new permits, new municipal contracts in the same cities where Carolina Skyway ran for 4 decades. The permit system that made the network invisible, the equipment trailer exemptions, the absence of interior inspection requirements, the institutional informality of carnival lot access has not changed. No formal advisory has been issued to municipal permit offices. No modification has been made to North Carolina or South Carolina inspection protocols for non-ride trailers in commercial carnival fleets. The ledger ends on May 17, 2026. 3 warrants remain outstanding. 33 to 42 prior victims unaccounted for. 2.3 million documented. Total unknown. The network is dismantled. The conditions that built it are still there.